Welcome to today's devotional message, brought to you by Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. The heavy silence of waiting. You find yourself sitting by the window again, perhaps tracing idle patterns on the condensation that gathers there, just like the questions gathering in your mind. The world outside exists, a blur of motion and color you can vaguely perceive. But inside, within the quiet architecture of your own soul, everything feels even more blurred, less defined, uncertain. You've gone through the motions. You've prayed, perhaps on your knees, until they ached, poured out the deepest longings and most raw fears of your heart, maybe even wept until sheer, heavy exhaustion claimed you, leaving you numb and empty. But the answer, the one you pleaded for, hasn't come. The door you knocked upon with desperate hope remains stubbornly, frustratingly shut. The situation that brought you to your knees hasn't budged. It remains exactly as it was, a monument to your unanswered cries. You glance at the phone resting silent on the table, willing it to ring, but it doesn't. You check your inbox for the 10th time, searching for an email that holds the key, but it hasn't arrived. You think of the test results that hang suspended in uncertainty, casting a long shadow over your days, or the empty space beside you, at the table, in your future, where a loved one should be. A space carved out by absence. You look ahead, and the future that once held outlines of hope now feels perpetually on hold, like a train delayed indefinitely on a desolate track. The silence from heaven in these moments can feel incredibly heavy, doesn't it? It descends like a thick, suffocating blanket, pressing down on your spirit, stifling the fragile embers of hope you try so hard to keep alive. In moments like these, when the air is thick with waiting and the path forward is obscured, the enemy seems to find his voice. He whispers his cruelest, most insidious lies directly into the vulnerable places of your heart. God has forgotten you, he hisses. Your prayers are hitting the ceiling, bouncing back unheard. You're not worthy of His attention, His favor, His intervention. This difficulty, this pain, this stagnant season, this is just your lot in life. Just give up. Stop hoping. Stop praying. Stop believing. And if we are truly honest, brutally honest with ourselves in the quiet of that waiting room, those whispers can sometimes feel deafeningly loud, resonating more powerfully in the moment than any promise from God we can try to remember. Maybe you've scrolled through social media, haven't you? Seen the highlight reels of others' lives, their breakthroughs, their answered prayers arriving seemingly on demand, their forward momentum, their visible progress, while you feel utterly stuck, caught in a spiritual holding pattern, circling the same point, unable to land. Comparison is a thief, stealing joy, peace, and perspective, especially when you are in a season of waiting. It makes the silence you experience feel like a personal indictment, a harsh sign of your lack of faith, or worse, evidence of some hidden sin you aren't aware of or haven't confessed. But beloved, what if that silence isn't abandonment? What if the waiting, this uncomfortable, challenging, soul-stretching waiting, isn't a punishment, not a sign of God's displeasure or distance? What if this season, this quiet, unseen, often painful season is not a void where God is absent, but a sacred, intentional space. A space where He is doing a work so deep, so profound, so utterly transformative, that it can only happen in the quiet, unseen, undisturbed places of your soul. Like a seed buried deep beneath the soil, seemingly forgotten and dormant, yet in the darkness and silence, a mysterious, powerful work of growth is occurring. This message, friend, is for you. It is specifically for the one whose heart aches in the waiting room of life, whose spirit feels weary under the weight of unanswered questions and unmet needs. It is a gentle, firm reminder spoken into the silence. You are seen. You are profoundly loved, and God is working. He is moving. He is orchestrating. He is preparing, even when you can't feel it with your emotions. Even when you can't see it with your physical eyes. Even and especially when the silence feels absolutely deafening. This waiting is not wasted time in God's economy. It is holy ground. Welcome to today's devotional message from Trusting God Always. You sit in the silence. Maybe it's the silence after a prayer lifted with tear-filled eyes, or the quiet that settles after another door remains stubbornly shut. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. The world keeps spinning, calendars turn, and the future you envisioned feels further away than ever. You see others receiving their breakthroughs, stepping into their next chapters, and a quiet question whispers in the chambers of your heart. Is God listening? Did He even hear? You feel the weight of the unspoken prayer, the burden of the prolonged hope, the ache of the unfulfilled promise. This space you're in, this liminal time between prayer and answer, between promise and fulfillment, can feel like a spiritual wilderness, a place where faith is tested not by thunder, but by the slow erosion of time. But maybe, just maybe, this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. A reminder that silence is not always absence, and delay is not always denial. That even in the quiet, God is present, and in the waiting, He is working. It is a powerful thing, this journey of faith, asking us to believe in what we cannot yet see, to trust in a plan that unfolds on a divine timeline, not our own. It requires a surrender of our need for control, for immediate answers, for visible progress. It invites us into a deeper intimacy with the one who holds time itself in His hands. He knows the desires of your heart, the depth of your struggle, the weary steps you've taken on this path. And He meets you here, in the quiet, with a promise that is as ancient as the mountains and as fresh as the morning dew. So breathe deeply. Allow His presence to fill this space with you. Feel the gentle affirmation that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved, even when the answer feels miles away. This journey of trusting God always isn't about having all the answers now. It's about knowing the one who does. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's anchor ourselves in the truth of His Word together. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You often view waiting as wasted time, an unwanted pause button pressed firmly on the trajectory of your life. You feel stuck, frustrated, like you're treading water while the current of destiny flows past you. Your inner self screams, "Skip this chapter." Fast forward to the resolution, the breakthrough, the moment the prayer is finally answered. The minutes tick by like hours, the days stretch into weeks, then months, sometimes even years, and you find yourself wrestling with impatience, doubt creeping in like a chilling fog. This waiting place can feel like a barren desert, dry and endless. Yet, when you turn the pages of Scripture, you discover a landscape teeming with stories of waiting. Long, arduous waits that stretched faith to its absolute limits. Waits that felt pointless to the ones living them, yet were saturated with divine purpose from God's perspective. Think of Abraham, called by God, promised a son who would father a nation, yet he waited not days, not weeks, but decades before Isaac, the son of promise, was born. Imagine the years of barrenness, the societal shame, the struggle to reconcile a grand promise with an empty reality. Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and thrown into prison. He waited years in a pit and a foreign land before his divine destiny unfolded as a ruler in Egypt. He spent time forgotten, unseen, while God was orchestrating the rescue of a nation. Moses waited 40 years in the silent wilderness, tending sheep, far from the palaces of Egypt, before God called him from the burning bush to lead Israel. 40 years, a lifetime of preparation in obscurity. And Israel themselves, a nation promised a land flowing with milk and honey, waited 40 years in the wilderness, learning lessons about dependence, obedience, and God's provision before finally entering the promised land. David, anointed king as a young shepherd boy, waited years as a fugitive, living in caves, hunted by a jealous king, before finally taking the throne God had destined him for. His waiting was a forge, shaping his character, teaching him reliance on God alone. Waiting in God's timing isn't passive inactivity. It is, paradoxically, active faith, being refined in the fire of patience. It's not God saying no. Often, it's God saying not yet, because He is diligently preparing something for you, or more importantly, preparing you for something. The insight here is utterly crucial, a truth that can transform your perspective. The waiting period is just as much a part of God's plan as the fulfillment itself. It is not an interruption. It is the integral process. It has purpose, depth, and divine intention woven into its very fabric. Like the threads of a tapestry unseen from the front, but essential to the final design. Don't despise the waiting. Discern it. What is God doing in you while you wait for what is outside of you? Is He cultivating patience, strengthening your trust, revealing hidden areas of your heart that need refining, teaching you to find contentment and identity not in the arrival, but in the journey with Him? Ask Him. Ask Him to show you the purpose in the pause, the lesson hidden within the delay. The wilderness years are not empty space. They are sacred ground where faith is made real, resilient, and deeply rooted. The clock ticks the slow, agonizing seconds. You stand, perhaps under a vast, star-dusted sky of your own making, the weight of a promise held close to your heart. It feels impossibly big, impossibly distant. Like Abraham, you heard the divine whisper, felt the weight of a breathtaking possibility. God promised him a lineage, numberless as the stars scattered across the ink-black canvas above, and not just any lineage, but one that would spring forth from his own body, through his beloved wife, Sarah. But then came the wait, not weeks, not months, but decades. You watch as the lines deepen around your eyes, as strength you once took for granted begins to wane. Abraham and Sarah felt this too. Their bodies, the very vessels meant to carry this promise, seemed to mock the divine declaration with their age and barrenness. The promise felt like a beautiful, cruel joke whispered on the wind. Doubt, a relentless vine, began to snake its way around their hearts. Was God still there? Did he forget? Was it all just a misunderstanding? And isn't this where we often find ourselves? Standing in the barren place, the wilderness of delay, while the divine promise feels lost on some distant horizon. The anxiety gnaws. The fear of loss whispers that time is running out. Rejection looms. Maybe we weren't meant for this promise after all. In this space, weariness sets in, and the temptation to take matters into our own hands becomes almost unbearable. Sarah, in her human weariness, offered a practical solution. Hagar, a surrogate, a way to make the promise happen, to force the river of God's plan into a channel carved by human hands. Ishmael was born, a child of human effort, conceived not within the divine timing or method, but out of impatience. He was a solution born from the pressure of the ticking clock, a bypassing of God's unique process. And what followed? Jealousy, strife, pain that rippled through generations. Ishmael was a beloved son, yes, but his birth outside of God's specific design for the covenant promise brought unintended complications. His story serves as a poignant, painful echo through history, reminding us of the cost of bypassing divine timing. This is the raw, relatable truth of Abraham's journey. It vividly illustrates the fierce tension between receiving a glorious promise and the struggle to trust God's timing, especially when it feels impossible and the clock is relentlessly advancing. The deep spiritual insight here is profound. When we grow weary in the waiting room of God's will, we are fiercely tempted to become our own saviors, to engineer our own outcomes. We create our Ishmaels, those hurried human solutions born of our fear and impatience. This action, however well-intentioned, bypasses the refining work God often intends to do in the waiting. He uses the delay not to withhold, but to prepare us, to deepen our trust, to purify our motives. Bypassing the wait often bypasses the transformation God planned for us within it, leading to unforeseen pain and complications down the road. Consider this quietly now. Where in your own life are you standing under a sky of promises, but the wait feels like an eternity? Where are you tempted to create your own Ishmael, a shortcut, a practical bypass, because God's promise seems too impossible or his timing too slow? This quiet reflection isn't about condemnation, but gentle awareness. It's a soft invitation to pause, to breathe, and to remember that the author of the promise is also the master of the clock. He is not limited by our aging bodies or the world's timeline. He is simply asking for trust, even when the promise feels vast and impossible, and the waiting feels endless. Surrender here is not defeat. It is the deepest form of faith in his ability to bring forth the miraculous in his perfect season. You sit there. The calendar pages keep turning, but the situation doesn't. It's been weeks, months, maybe even years since you first whispered that prayer, since you first stepped onto this path of waiting. You meticulously planned, you diligently worked, you tried every angle, every strategy, every prayer you knew how to pray. And still, the silence is thick, the path unmarked, the destination a fading mirage. You feel the frustration clawing at your throat, the gnawing anxiety settling deep in your gut. This discomfort, this deep unease you feel in the prolonged pause, isn't just about the outcome. It's about the stark, undeniable truth this waiting period lays bare. Your profound, inherent need to be in control. Human nature craves certainty. We want timelines, guarantees, visible, tangible progress we can point to, milestones we can check off. Waiting strips all of that away. It places you, vulnerable and exposed, right in the heart of your inability to orchestrate outcomes, to speed up processes, to bend reality to your will or your preferred schedule. You realize, perhaps for the first time with such painful clarity, how much you've relied on your own strength, your own cleverness, your own relentless effort to make things happen, to force doors open, to chart the course through the storm yourself. The ache of waiting is often, fundamentally, the ache of losing control, of having to loosen your grip on the steering wheel, of surrendering your carefully constructed agenda to a divine one you cannot see or predict. This isn't punishment, it's a divine unveiling. Waiting is a precise, even merciful, tool designed not to break you, but to gently dismantle the idols you've built within yourself. The idols of self-sufficiency, of manipulation, of believing that your power, not God's, is the ultimate force in your life. It's in the barren wilderness of waiting that you learn true power lies not in desperately trying to manipulate circumstances, but in the quiet, courageous act of surrendering them entirely to the one who holds all things. The visible and the invisible, the timelines and the outcomes, securely in His hands. He calls you to trust the unseen process more than your own finite foresight. This isn't inactivity. It is perhaps the most profound activity of all, the active choice to yield. So look inward now, in this quiet space of waiting. What does this prolonged pause reveal about your deep-seated need to be in control? Can you feel the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the direct physical manifestation of your resistance to releasing that grip? Can you, just for a moment, imagine letting go of the timeline you've constructed? Can you dare to trust that God is the ultimate orchestrator, the master weaver of the tapestry of your life, even if His methods seem slow, circuitous, or utterly mysterious to your limited perspective? He's not asking for your strength to control the uncontrollable. He's simply asking for your surrender. The peace you seek is found not in grasping tighter, but in opening your hand. You sit there again, staring at the calendar. The days bleed into weeks, the weeks into months, maybe even years. You remember the prayer you whispered, the promise you clung to, the hope that felt so vibrant just a season ago. Now it feels thin, worn, almost translucent. You measure God's response by your clock, by the rhythm of your life, the pressing need, the aching void, the urgent deadline. A month without relief feels like an eternity when chronic pain is your constant companion. A year waiting for a job, a breakthrough, a child, a healing feels like a lifetime, stretching out in barren silence. Your heart cries out, "How long, O Lord?" This is where we often find ourselves, standing at the intersection of our hurried, finite timelines and God's vast, eternal perspective. We live tethered to sunrise and sunset, to ticking clocks and changing seasons. Our perspective is limited by the moment, by the pain we feel right now, the lack we see today. We perceive delay, we whisper doubt, we feel forgotten, overlooked, or perhaps, tragically, as if our faith wasn't strong enough to speed things along. It feels like a test, a punishment, or worse, indifference from the one who promised to never leave us nor forsake us. The storm rages, and the boat feels small, battered by waves of uncertainty and the gnawing fear that maybe, just maybe, he isn't coming. But the truth, the profound and peace-giving truth, is that God does not exist within the constraints of our time. He is not bound by moments or minutes, by decades or millennia. He dwells in eternity, where past, present, and future coexist in his all-seeing gaze. He sees the beginning before it begins, the middle unfolding, and the end already written. His perspective is cosmic, strategic, sovereign. What looks like a frustrating, agonizing delay from your vantage point, a wilderness wandering that feels endless, a seed that refuses to sprout, is, from his, the perfect timing. It is the precise moment needed for deeper roots to grow, for character to be forged in the fire, for faith to become less about convenience and more about utter reliance on him. Think of the biblical narratives. They are saturated with moments that felt like agonizing delays to those living them. Abraham waited decades for the promised son. Joseph spent years in a pit and a prison before stepping into his divine purpose. Israel wandered for 40 years before entering the promised land. Lazarus was dead for 4 days before Jesus arrived. To human eyes, these were delays, setbacks, moments of crushing despair. But in God's eternal plan, they were perfect preparation, necessary refining, strategic positioning. Each waiting season was pregnant with purpose, shaping individuals and nations, revealing his faithfulness in ways that swift, instant answers never could. The oil lamp needs refilling in the dark waiting, not because the bridegroom is truly delayed, but because the watching required endurance. This divine perspective challenges our human impatience, our desire for instant gratification, our reliance on control. It asks us to surrender our urgent stopwatch and trust his eternal clock. It requires a shift in focus from when to who, from the timing of the promise to the character of the promise giver. He is not slow because he is uncaring. He is precise because he is sovereign. His delays are not denials. They are often divine detours, leading to a far greater destination than we could have envisioned. He is working all things together for your good and for his glory, even when the pace feels excruciatingly slow, like climbing a mountain range where the summit seems perpetually out of reach. So, how can you navigate this tension? How do you trust God's timing when your heart aches for relief, when the waiting feels like a heavy shroud, when the promise seems further away than ever? It begins with acknowledging the pain of the waiting. It is okay to feel the sting, the frustration, the fear, but it must not end there. You gently, deliberately choose to lift your gaze beyond your immediate circumstance. You remember his character, his unchanging nature, his track record throughout history and in your own past. You hold on to the paradox that God is both intimately near in your present pain and infinitely outside of time, orchestrating events for your ultimate good. He is sovereignly slow and miraculously swift all at once. Trusting his timing means relinquishing your timeline, placing it gently into his nail-scarred hands, and believing that even in the silence, even in the stillness, even in the apparent inaction, he is perfectly at work. He sees the end, and it is good. Can you anchor your soul in that truth today? Can you whisper, "Not my will, but yours," And not my time, but yours, and find a quiet peace settle over your anxious heart. This isn't about mustering strength. It's about surrendering control. And in that surrender, you find a deeper, more resilient trust in the one whose timing is always perfectly divine. The air is thick with it. A quiet you didn't ask for. A stillness that feels less like peace and more like abandonment. You prayed. You waited. You laid bare the ache of your soul before God, expecting something, a sign, a whisper on the wind, a sudden clarity like a breaking dawn. But instead, there is only the vast, echoing silence. It settles around you like dust, heavy and suffocating. This is the spiritual desert, isn't it? Where the well of connection seems to have run dry and your voice feels lost in the empty space between earth and heaven. Doubt, a persistent, unwelcome guest, begins to tap at the window of your heart. Does he hear? Does he care? And you somehow missed the signal. Or worse, have you fallen off his radar entirely? This silence breeds fear, a raw, exposed loneliness that asks, am I alone in this? It's a hard place to be, this place of perceived absence. We are wired for connection, for response, for the tangible reassurance of a loving Father's voice. When the voice is silent, the questions can become deafening. Think of the disciples. The world they knew had just imploded. The one they had followed, the one they had placed all their hopes upon, was gone. 3 days stretched before them, cloaked in agonizing silence. 3 days where the future felt impossibly bleak, where confusion and despair were their only companions. They felt utterly abandoned, lost in a silence that promised only defeat. Yet, in that profound, terrifying stillness, the greatest victory known to humanity was being accomplished. In the unseen depths, in the hidden spaces where no human eye could witness, the power of God was dismantling death itself. The silence wasn't his absence. It was the quiet, powerful work of resurrection. This is the spiritual insight that breaks through the perceived emptiness. God is often most profoundly at work in the silence, in the unseen, in the places where our human senses strain and find no trace of his activity. The silence isn't his withdrawal. It can be the quiet process of building a deeper, more resilient faith within you. It can be the strengthening of your resolve, the refining fire that prepares you for what is coming. It can be the silent preparation of the ground, unseen beneath the surface, for a harvest you cannot yet imagine. Sometimes his most powerful answers are delivered not in thunder, but in the subtle reshaping of your soul, in the quiet strengthening of your spirit that only the silence can accomplish. Can you practice leaning into this silence? Can you find the courage to trust that his presence is still with you, even when you cannot hear him, even when you cannot see the work being done? Can you seek him not in the external clamor you expect, but in the quiet stillness of your own soul? The silence doesn't mean he is not near. It might mean he is closer than ever, working in a way that requires your deepest trust. To find God in the quiet is perhaps the holiest discovery of all. Learning to perceive his presence not with your ears, but with the expectant heart of a child. The silence stretches, thick and heavy, pressing in on you. You've prayed, you've waited, you've felt the days bleed into weeks, weeks into months. The path ahead remains stubbornly closed, or perhaps worse, invisible. In this vast, echoing space of unanswered longing, a different kind of voice begins to whisper. It's the voice of urgency, laced with fear. Do something. Don't just sit there. God's not moving. Maybe you have to. And this is where the danger lies, the almost irresistible urge to run ahead, when the wait feels not just long, but truly unbearable. The temptation to seize control, to create our own solution, to force a door open that God clearly hasn't opened, becomes an all-consuming tide. It might be that job offer that feels just good enough, a stepping stone perhaps, but deep down it lacks the quiet peace, the divine confirmation that settles the soul. You take it anyway, telling yourself it's practical, it's necessary, anything to escape the uncertainty of unemployment or dissatisfaction. Or maybe it's the relationship you cling to or even initiate prematurely, not out of genuine connection or God's leading, but out of a raw, aching fear of being alone, of facing the wilderness of singleness or loneliness. It could be an impulsive financial decision driven by anxiety about provision, or a sharp, unbidden word spoken from frustration with delay, rather than faith in His timing. These actions, born not of faith-fueled patience but of restless impatience and a fundamental lack of trust in God's perfect, sovereign timing, rarely lead to solid ground. Look to the ancient story, the dust swirling around a tent in the desert. Abraham, a man holding a staggering promise from God, a son, a lineage, a nation, despite his advanced age. He waited, but the wait stretched. The human mind, ever eager to assist the divine plan, saw a potential shortcut. Sarah suggested Hagar. A logical solution, perhaps, in the customs of the day, but not God's chosen path. It was a decision born of weary impatience, a subtle declaration that God's promise, as given, felt impossible, insufficient in the face of barren reality. They ran ahead, and the consequence, a conflict that echoed through generations, heartache, regret, and a significant detour from the simple, miraculous path God intended. Their impatience didn't speed up God's true plan. It created complications that are still felt today. This spiritual insight is stark but true. Running ahead of God's timing, initiating action out of anxiety rather than peace, indicates a profound lack of trust. It suggests we doubt either His ability or His willingness to provide the right thing at the right time. It implies that we believe we know better than the one who holds the cosmos in His hands, who knit us together in our mother's womb, and knows the number of hairs on our head. It whispers that His promise isn't sufficient, that His word needs our hurried intervention to come to pass. It's trying to add our small, flickering lamplight to the brilliance of the sun. What situations in your life right now are tempting you to rush? Where are you feeling the pressure to force a door open because waiting feels like doing nothing, or worse, like being forgotten? Can you pause in this moment, breathe deep, and feel the presence of the one who is never late, never absent? Can you surrender that timeline, that urgent need to make something happen, back into His more than capable hands? Trust that His path, though it may feel slower than your anxious heart desires, is always the wisest, leading to a destination far richer and more secure than any shortcut you could devise. The wilderness of waiting is not a void. It is often the very ground where God prepares you for the promise, and prepares the promise for you. To stand still in faith is often the fastest way forward. The silence stretches, thick and heavy. Another day ends, marked by the absence of what you hoped for. The answered prayer, the change you long to see, the breakthrough that feels perpetually just out of reach. You feel the restless energy building, an urge to push, to force, to make something happen in this frustrating pause. Isn't waiting just wasted time? Isn't it a sign that God hasn't heard, or perhaps doesn't care? This feeling of being stuck in the in-between place, where yesterday is gone and tomorrow hasn't arrived, can breed a quiet desperation, a subtle erosion of hope. The questions echo in the stillness. How much longer? Why this delay? But look closer at this season. The Bible speaks of patience not as an empty void, but as a fruit of the Spirit. Like an apple on the branch, patience isn't instant. It begins as a tiny seed, survives the harsh winds, soaks up the sun and the rain, and slowly, day by day, swells and sweetens in its skin. This ripening takes time. It demands specific conditions, sometimes harsh, sometimes gentle, and crucially, it requires a season of waiting for maturity. The very ground you stand on in this delay, this uncertainty, is the fertile earth where the Holy Spirit is cultivating this fruit within your soul. It's not a virtue you muster up through sheer willpower. It's something God develops in you as you walk through the very experiences that challenge its absence. True patience isn't the passive sitting back, shrugging your shoulders in resignation. It's an active endurance, a tenacious clinging to hope, deeply rooted in the unwavering character of God. It's trust standing firm when circumstances scream otherwise. It's the quiet resolve of the farmer who trusts the harvest even when the seed is hidden beneath the soil. Perhaps the wait itself is not an interruption of your journey, but an essential part of the path God is laying out. He is not merely making you wait for something. He is using the waiting to make something of you. This patient endurance, grown in the quiet seasons, doesn't just help you survive this wait. It becomes a spiritual muscle, strengthening you for every mountain and valley yet to come. In the stillness, where you feel most powerless, God is investing His power to transform your soul. Can you see the divine gardener at work, tending to your character in this season of seeming inactivity? What if embracing the process, trusting His hands, is the very key that unlocks the sweetness of the fruit He is growing within you? The fruit is indeed worth the wait, because the fruit is His likeness blossoming in your life. The wait stretches out like a barren field under a moonless sky. You've prayed the prayer, whispered the hope, poured out the ache of your heart into the silence. You check the phone again, scan the horizon for a sign, a shift, anything that tells you the season is turning. But the answer feels slow in coming, or perhaps hasn't arrived at all. You wonder if your faith is failing, if you misunderstood the promise, if you're somehow missing the mark while standing in the shadowlands of what feels like endless anticipation. This season of waiting, this quiet, unmoving space, can feel like a kind of darkness. It's not necessarily a painful darkness, though it can be, but a hidden one. A place where visible progress seems frozen, where the vibrant bloom you long for feels miles away. Consider a tree standing resilient against a storm, branches swaying, but its trunk holding firm. What holds it? What gives it that incredible strength to withstand the gale-force winds, the driving rain? It's not what you see above ground. The most crucial, foundational, life-sustaining work happens underground, in the dark. The roots, unseen by human eyes, are spreading, deepening, anchoring themselves in the soil. They are diligently drawing up nourishment, building the unseen architecture that supports everything visible above. Before the towering trunk reaches for the sky, before the leaves unfurl in vibrant green, before the fruit ripens in abundance, the quiet, tireless work of root building must occur. And when the storms inevitably come, the unexpected winds of loss, the torrential downpours of disappointment, the persistent drought of waiting, it is these deep, resilient roots that keep the tree standing, unwavering. They are the lifeline, the anchor, the silent testament to the power of unseen growth. Your seasons of waiting are often profoundly like this, periods where God is doing His most crucial work, not necessarily for you yet, in the visible realm of answered prayer, but in you. He is building the unseen foundations of your character, deepening the roots of your faith in the hidden soil of your soul. He is not idle while you wait. He is actively preparing you. He is building resilience, refining perseverance, teaching you a deeper kind of dependence on Him that can only be learned in the absence of immediate visible answers. This unseen work is absolutely essential. It's the preparation for the weight and responsibility of the blessing He has for you, the strength needed to steward it well when it arrives, and the stability required to navigate the future challenges that life will undoubtedly bring. The spiritual insight here is profound and often overlooked. While you are waiting for the visible answers, God is doing invisible, foundational work in you. He is deepening your roots of faith, building resilience, and preparing you for the weight and responsibility of the blessing He has for you. Don't underestimate the power, the necessity of this unseen work in the dark. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The seasons that feel the most unproductive, the most stagnant, the most silent are often the seasons where God is doing the most significant, foundational work within us. We long for the fruit above ground, the visible evidence of growth and blessing, but He is focused on the roots below. He is asking you to trust the process happening in the dark. He is strengthening your faith, not by instantly removing the challenge, but by equipping you through it. He is teaching you to find nourishment not in the fleeting sunlight of circumstance, but in the deep, constant source of His presence and His promises, even when you cannot see the path ahead. This season of waiting, this darkness, isn't a void, it's a workshop. It's the place where faith is forged into something unbreakable, where trust becomes not just a word, but the very fiber of your being. How can you cooperate with God in this quiet, essential process of root building during your wait? It begins with acknowledging that the hidden work is holy work, trusting that even in the silence, He is cultivating something beautiful and strong within you. The breath catches in your throat, another day dissolving into unanswered silence. You've knelt, you've wept, you've poured out the same plea, the same urgent request to a God who seems to move at a glacial pace, if He is moving at all. The waiting feels endless, a vast, arid wilderness stretching before you, and your prayers have become pleas for acceleration, demands for immediate rescue from the very real anxieties that press in. Speed it up, God. Break through now. Change this. Fix this. Deliver me from this waiting room of discomfort and uncertainty. It's so easy to reduce prayer in these seasons to a transactional exchange, a mechanism to force God's hand, to get the desired outcome on your timeline. You rattle off your list, hoping if you just say it enough, with enough fervor, God will finally relent and grant your request. The focus is entirely on the problem, the perceived delay, the desired resolution. But what if prayer in the waiting is something entirely different? What if its true purpose isn't to manipulate the divine into bending to your will, but to gently bend your will towards the divine? This silent space, this pause in the narrative of your life, is an invitation to alignment. It's an opportunity to surrender your frantic timeline to His perfect, often inscrutable timing. It's a sacred chance to lift your gaze from the daunting mountain before you, or the treacherous valley you're traversing, and seek His perspective, His sovereign purpose woven into the fabric of the delay. Prayer becomes less about changing God's mind, for His plans are perfect and His wisdom infinite, and more about changing your own heart, softening its resistance, releasing its grip on control, and aligning its pulse with the steady, rhythmic beat of His eternal purposes. Think of the disciples in the storm-tossed boat. They cried out to Jesus, not just for rescue from the waves, but perhaps for a shift in their own fearful hearts, for an alignment with the One who could sleep through the tempest. Their prayer brought peace, yes, but it was His peace that calmed the storm, and just as significantly, His presence that anchored their fear. The spiritual insight is profound, a gentle paradox. Prayer in the waiting room is not a mechanism to force God's hand, but a means to anchor our hearts in His peace and trust, aligning our desires with His perfect will and timing. It's in the stillness of waiting prayer that we discover the true strength isn't in commanding the wind, but in knowing the One who holds it in His hands. So, how does your prayer change when you shift your focus from the urgency of your desired outcome and the ticking clock of your timeline to the unchanging character and sovereign purpose of God? Can you find a quiet peace simply in being present with Him in the wait? Not just asking, but being? Can your prayer become a conversation of trust, a posture of surrender, an act of aligning your restless spirit with the divine rhythm of His grace? It is in this space, not of demanding, but of dwelling, that true peace in the waiting begins to bloom. The quiet stretches on. You check the clock again, then your inbox, then the sky. Days bleed into weeks, maybe months, maybe even years. The prayer you lifted, raw and hopeful, feels swallowed by an immense silence. This stillness begins to feel heavy, like a stone weighing down your chest. Has God forgotten? Did you somehow miss the mark, step out of line, and now this waiting is the consequence? A penalty box where time stands still and hope begins to thin. This is where the ache settles in. The gnawing worry that the delay means denial, that God is simply withholding good things from you. The whispers of doubt grow louder in the quiet. But this feeling, this belief that waiting is a punishment, is a shadow cast by fear, not the truth of God's heart. The ancient words echo across the centuries, a lamp in the wilderness. God's thoughts towards you are for welfare, for a future and a hope, not for evil. Jeremiah 29:11. This period of waiting isn't a consequence of your failures. It's often a crucible of divine preparation. Consider the seed in the dark earth. It waits. It pushes through resistance. It's not being punished. It's being prepared for the sun, for growth, for bearing fruit. You are in a similar season. God isn't just preparing the blessing you seek, the open door, the healing, the answered prayer. He is actively preparing the circumstances surrounding it, orchestrating details you cannot see from your vantage point in the valley. And most profoundly, He is preparing you. He is refining your character like gold tested by fire, equipping you with patience, resilience, and a deeper dependence on Him. Lessons learned in the pause become the foundation for stepping into the next season. This wilderness isn't a dead end, it's a training ground. Your anxiety whispers, He's keeping good things away. But His truth declares, He is preparing you for the best things. The waiting isn't empty, it is full of His unseen work. It is a paradoxical space where stillness breeds strength and delay cultivates deeper trust. He isn't withholding, He is developing. He is not punishing, He is perfecting. The oil in your lamp needs time to be poured and settled before the wick can truly burn bright. Can you look at this waiting not as a barren season of punishment, but as a fertile ground of preparation? Can you see it as an equipping station, a refining fire, a classroom where God is teaching you lessons essential for the journey ahead? He is not delaying because you are unworthy. He is waiting because He is faithfully preparing everything, including your heart, to receive the fullness of what He has planned. Breathe deeply into that truth. Choose to trust the process. Trust the preparer. This waiting is part of your story, written by a loving author who promises a good ending. You sit by the silent phone, the weight of rejection a heavy cloak you can't seem to shake off. The email inbox remains stubbornly empty, day after agonizing day. You were laid off, blindsided, and now the waiting for a new job feels like wandering in a financial wilderness. Every step uncertain, every prospect dwindling like water in a dry riverbed under a relentless sun. This isn't just a wait, it's this wait, specific in its gnawing anxiety about bills, about purpose, about where you fit in the world now. Or perhaps the waiting is etched onto your physical body. Every morning is a fresh negotiation with pain, a daily reminder of strength that isn't fully yours yet. You've prayed for healing, sought remedies, held on to hope, but the journey stretches out, a long, difficult valley where the shadows cling tightly. The fear isn't just of the physical struggle. It's the fear of endurance failing, of hope growing weary, of this becoming your permanent landscape. This weight is personal, intimate, a constant companion you desperately long to leave behind. Maybe the ache is deep in your heart, a longing for connection that feels perpetually unmet. You watch others build lives, share futures, and the wait for a spouse, a partner, a soul to walk alongside you feels endless. Or the waiting is for a different kind of return, the painful vigil for a prodigal child whose absence is a raw, open wound. Every milestone passed without them feels like a step backward, every holiday a poignant emptiness. This wait isn't abstract. It's wrapped in specific memories, specific faces, specific silences. Or perhaps you stand on the edge of a breakthrough, sensing it, praying for it, but the final push hasn't come. It might be in a strained relationship, where reconciliation feels impossibly far, each interaction a tender battlefield. It could be the resolution of a long-standing conflict, the clarity needed for a pivotal life decision, the release from a situation that feels like a cage. This waiting is charged with anticipation, yet burdened by the fear that the breakthrough may never arrive. that you might be stuck in this in-between place forever. These weights, though vastly different in their details, the sterile email, the weary body, the empty chair, the tense silence, share a common ground. They are steeped in uncertainty, leaving you vulnerable, exposed. They demand a hope that can sometimes feel like a fragile, flickering flame in a strong wind. You are not waiting for something. You are waiting for this. And God sees this. The profound spiritual insight isn't that God is a distant orchestrator of abstract timelines. It's that He meets us in the very specific, granular reality of our waiting. His comfort isn't a generic balm. It is tailored precisely to the texture of your financial fear, the specific ache in your body, the unique sting of your relational longing, the particular knot of uncertainty in your decision-making. You are not a number in a cosmic queue. You are a child seen, known, and cared for in the precise contours of this journey you are on. He doesn't just see the struggle. He sees your struggle. Think of Hagar in the wilderness, not lost in a general desert, but seen specifically by God in her desperate flight from Abraham's household, her specific thirst, her specific despair with Ishmael. Genesis 16. The God who saw Hagar sees you in the wilderness of your specific wait. He is El Roi, the God who sees, and His gaze is intensely personal. He doesn't offer blanket assurances. He offers tailored strength, whispered comfort, and promises that speak directly to the fears rattling in your heart about this job, this healing, this relationship, this breakthrough. Here lies a gentle paradox. Sometimes, the deepest movement of God happens in the stillness you dread the most. And often, the greatest strength is found not in striving to fix the weight yourself, but in the quiet act of surrender, bringing the raw, messy reality of this specific weight before Him. Can you gather the fragmented pieces of this waiting, the specific fears that wake you at 3 a.m., the hopes you are almost afraid to name, the longings that feel too vulnerable to utter, and lay them one by one before God? Can you trust that He not only hears your prayer, but understands the unique language of this particular ache in your soul? He doesn't ask you to pretend your waiting is easy or generic. He invites you to bring the detailed map of your uncertainty, trusting that His presence is already marked on every path you walk within it. You are not alone in your specific wait, not for a single, solitary moment. He sees you, He cares, and He is with you right here, right now. You sit in the quiet ache of the unanswered, the plan you prayed for, the timeline you marked on your calendar. It hasn't unfolded. Instead, life feels like a tangled thread you can't make sense of, and the why echoes louder than the promise. Doubt taps gently at the door, whispering, "Does God even hear? Does He care that this makes no sense?" This is the wilderness of not understanding, a place where faith feels thin, stretched between what you hoped for and what is. Remember Habakkuk, the prophet whose heart cried out in confusion. He saw injustice, decay, the wicked seemingly prospering, and he questioned God. His voice wasn't a polite inquiry. It was a desperate, honest plea for understanding. "How long, O Lord?" he asked. He couldn't reconcile the God he knew with the chaos he witnessed. And God's answer? It wasn't a simple explanation or an immediate fix. It was a revelation of a complex, unfolding divine strategy, a plan involving nations and consequences, far grander and more intricate than Habakkuk could possibly grasp in that moment. It required Habakkuk to step back from his need for linear logic and simply live by faith. This is often where our faith is most tested, when God's timing feels frustratingly slow, when His methods seem counterintuitive, when the path forward appears contrary to everything we believe is right or best. It challenges the very core of our trust. Do we trust only when the picture is clear and the steps make sense? Or do we trust His character, His goodness, His unwavering wisdom, even when the unfolding story defies our human comprehension? This is the profound truth woven into Isaiah 55, 8-9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. His perspective spans eternity. Ours is bound by the horizon of the present moment. True faith isn't the absence of questions. It's the courage to bring the questions to God and then surrender the need for immediate, complete understanding. It's trusting that His wisdom is inscrutable, not because He is distant, but because His knowledge and power operate on a scale we cannot fathom. It means releasing the tight grip of why and how, and finding rest in the assurance that God does understand. He sees the end from the beginning. He is working, meticulously, according to His perfect wisdom, even when the current chapter reads like a riddle. Where in your weight are you struggling most because you don't understand the logic, the timeline, the unexpected turns? Can you, just for this moment, breathe out the need to grasp it all and breathe in the quiet confidence that the one holding the universe holds you too? It's in this surrender to the mystery that true peace, paradoxically, begins to bloom. The path stretches out, a long, dusty road under an indifferent sky. You've been walking it for so long now, waiting for the sign, the shift, the breakthrough. Each sunrise promises little change, and the quiet whisper grows louder. Maybe it's not going to happen. You feel the fatigue setting in, the weary pull towards throwing down the worn map, sinking onto the ground, and surrendering not to God's will, but to the exhaustion of hope deferred. It's easier to quit, isn't it? To accept the barrenness, to silence the aching desire, than to keep walking with blistered feet and a pounding heart that still dares to hope. This is the raw edge of the long wait, where faith isn't tested by fire, but by the slow, erosive drip of time and unanswered questions. Yet God's truth steps into this quiet struggle, reshaping the very idea of waiting. Perseverance, in His language, isn't merely enduring inactivity. It's an active stance, a vibrant, living faith expressed within the season of stillness or slow progress. It's the difference between a withered branch and a vine being pruned. James 1:4 speaks into this, whispering, "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." It reveals a divine process, a holy craftsmanship occurring precisely in the moments you feel most incomplete or inadequate. This isn't waiting for God to do something. It's waiting with God while He does something profound in you. It's choosing to believe His promises are truer than your current circumstances, even when the storm rages or the wilderness feels endless. It means continuing to lift your voice in prayer, even when the heavens seem silent. It means continuing to seek Him, to open His Word, to serve where you are planted, to do the next right thing you know to do, not out of obligation, but as an act of trust. It's the quiet refusal to let frustration or discouragement extinguish the lamp of hope burning within your soul. It is in this active waiting that faith is not only preserved, but perfected, becoming stronger, purer, more resilient. The profound insight is this: perseverance in the waiting season doesn't just get you through the trial, it transforms you within it. It is the divine crucible where your character is refined, where the dross of impatience and self-reliance is burned away, leaving behind the pure gold of a faith that relies utterly on Him. You become complete, not by gaining what you desire immediately, but by gaining a deeper intimacy with the one who holds all desires. This active choice to keep trusting, keep hoping, keep obeying, even when the finish line is far beyond sight, is the very engine of spiritual maturity. It's a surrender that is simultaneously a defiant stand. It's finding your strength not in the absence of struggle, but in the quiet, persistent posture of leaning into His presence during the struggle. What does this active perseverance look like for you right now in the midst of your specific wait? What is the smallest step of faith, of hope, of simple obedience that you can choose to take today, anchoring yourself in His promise even when the breakthrough feels like a distant mountain peak obscured by clouds? Let this small choice be your act of powerful perseverance. The calendar pages turn, yet your life feels paused. You find yourself living perpetually in the future, mentally drafting scenarios, clinging to benchmarks, whispering the mantra, "I'll really be happy when," or "life will finally start when." It's a relentless treadmill, always running towards a horizon that keeps receding. You are here now, but your heart resides somewhere else, in the desired outcome, the healed wound, the answered prayer that hasn't arrived. This present moment, the one God has given you, feels like an inconvenient placeholder, a waiting room you desperately want to leave. The joy you long for is always then, never now. It's a subtle thief, robbing you of the very life unfolding around you, disguised as hope, but breeding discontent. But step back and listen to the quiet voice from a prison cell. The Apostle Paul, confined by chains, uncertain of his future, wrote words that defied his circumstances. He wasn't living the life he planned. He was stripped of his freedom, his ministry constrained. Yet he penned the profound truth: "I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am." Philippians 4:11. He spoke of the secret to facing both abundance and need, hunger and plenty. This contentment wasn't a passive resignation. It was an active learning, a grace discovered not in the absence of hardship or waiting, but right in the midst of it. It's a powerful paradox. Freedom isn't found after the chains fall, but while you are still behind them, because He is there. His contentment wasn't dependent on his situation changing, but on his relationship with Christ being sufficient in every situation. True contentment isn't the absence of waiting or struggle. It is the powerful presence of Christ discovered within the wilderness, the valley, the stillness. It's recognizing that the wellspring of life isn't in the future blessing, but in the living water available now, even in the driest season. This perspective allows you to find peace, purpose, and profound gratitude, not by looking past the current moment, but by being fully present in it, aware that God is with you here and now, just as He was with Paul in that Roman prison. The waiting season isn't a blank space between moments of real life. It is a sacred space where presence is cultivated and sufficiency is learned. Consider the quiet invitation before you. How can you today cultivate gratitude not for what is coming, but for what is? What if you allowed yourself to find joy and meaning in the journey itself, rather than constantly scanning the horizon for the destination? What if the sufficiency Hall spoke of is available to you right now, in this very moment of waiting, meeting your anxiety not with resolution, but with His perfect peace? Let your heart settle in the truth that God is with you today. Can you look around, find one small thing to be grateful for, and anchor your heart in His presence, cultivating contentment not when the wait is over, but while you are still in it? The calendar page turns, but the landscape of your life feels stubbornly unchanged. You've prayed the prayer, perhaps multiple times, poured out your heart, and waited. Waited through days that bled into weeks, weeks into months, sometimes years. And the silence? It feels deafening. It's the silence that breeds doubt, the quiet where impatience takes root like a persistent weed. You watch others' lives seem to move forward, see their prayers answered, their seasons shift, while yours remains in a holding pattern. The frustration builds, the questions sharpen. Did God hear? Does He care? Why this delay? This is the wilderness of waiting, a place where the soul feels thirsty and the spirit grows weary under the relentless sun of unanswered longing. It's easy to feel passive in this space, like a ship becalmed, just drifting until the wind decides to blow. But Scripture whispers a different truth, a powerful, counterintuitive command in the heart of the wait. The psalmist doesn't say, "Drift idly until the Lord moves." He writes, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him." Psalm 37, verse 7. And again, a double insistence, a strengthening word for the soul. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. Psalm 27:14. These aren't suggestions for enduring a lull. They are commands for active, intentional positioning in the stillness. They call you to not just passively receive God's action, but to actively place your trust and hope in His timing, even when that timing feels excruciatingly slow. Our impatience stems from a limited, ground-level view. We see our single thread, our immediate need, our isolated circumstance. We desire the quick fix, the immediate resolution, the problem dissolved now. But God sees the entire tapestry. His perfect timing is not calibrated to the rhythm of our comfort or the urgency of our convenience. It is calibrated to intersect multiple lives, intricate circumstances woven together, and eternal purposes that stretch far beyond our line of sight. He is working on a cosmic scale, a divine symphony where every note, every pause, every entrance is precisely timed for maximum impact. When God moves, it will be at the precise, perfect moment. Not just for your good, though that is promised, but for His maximum glory. It's a paradox of faith. You find speed by refusing to rush, and you find progress by daring to be still before Him. Consider the seed buried underground. It doesn't rush its germination. It waits in darkness, drawing strength from unseen sources, trusting the timing of sun and rain it cannot control or even perceive. Your season of waiting can be that subterranean space of growth, a time where God strengthens roots invisible to the surface world. The fears that surface during this wait, the anxiety that things will never change, the doubt that God has forgotten, a feeling of rejection because your prayer seems unheard. These are met not with immediate answers, but with the profound reassurance of His perfect timing. He isn't delaying because He is uncaring. He is delaying because He is calibrating. Every moment of waiting is intrinsically linked to His perfect character and His unwavering faithfulness. Can you surrender your need for immediate gratification? Can you release the tight grip of your preferred timeline and rest in the profound, often challenging truth that when God acts, it is always, undeniably, perfectly on time? The waiting is not wasted time. It is sacred space. It is an invitation to deepen your trust, to strengthen your heart, to practice being still before the Lord, assured that the maestro of the universe knows the perfect beat drop. It is always, always worth the wait, because the arrival moment is not just an answer to a prayer. It is a revelation of His perfect wisdom and sovereign love, tailored specifically for that perfect moment. You have walked through the valleys of waiting. You have felt the sting of silence pressing in, the heavy cloak of uncertainty settling upon your shoulders. You have wrestled with the relentless tick-tock of impatience, each second amplifying the ache of what is not yet here. Perhaps in those quiet, lonely moments, you questioned if you were forgotten, if the promises whispered in prayer had simply drifted away like smoke in the wind. But look back now. See the path behind you, winding through trials and stillness. You are still here, not unscathed perhaps, but undeniably present. Is grace, a quiet, constant current beneath the surface of your struggle, has sustained you. The weight hasn't broken you in the way you feared it might. No, if you've allowed it, if you've yielded to its unexpected work, this season of suspension has begun to make you stronger, more deeply dependent on the one whose strength never wavers, more profoundly rooted in His unchanging love. It's a gentle paradox, isn't it, that the season of seeming lack is precisely where abundance in Him is cultivated. The ultimate peace in waiting, the kind that settles deep within the bones and calms the anxious heart, doesn't arrive with a sudden burst of clarity, revealing the exact timeline or guaranteeing the desired outcome. No, that peace comes from knowing the one who holds the timeline in His hands, the one who orchestrates every outcome, seen and unseen, known and unknown. His presence is not something that arrives only when the waiting is over. He is with you in the waiting room. He sits beside you by the window, watching the world move while your world feels paused, hearing the silent questions of your heart that you can't even voice aloud. He is not distant during this time. He is actively, intimately involved. He is refining you in the fire of delay, burning away impurities of self-reliance and doubt, revealing the precious gold of pure trust, is building your roots deeper in the dark soil of uncertainty, establishing a foundation that will support future growth and weathered storms. He is cultivating patience in your soul, a fruit of the Spirit that ripens slowly, beautifully, transforming frantic energy into quiet confidence. The wait is temporary, a fleeting season under a vast, eternal sky. But His faithfulness endures forever, a promise etched into the very fabric of creation, unwavering and true. You are not defined by the wait itself, by the job application pending, the diagnosis unclear, the relationship strained, the dream deferred. You are defined, fundamentally and eternally, by the one you are waiting on. Let the truth of his ever-present nearness, his unwavering focus on you, be the anchor for your soul tossed on the waves of uncertainty. His love sings over you, a quiet melody of assurance in the silence, a lullaby of hope when fear tries to shout. Trust him with the seconds that crawl by, the minutes that feel heavy, the hours that blend into days, the days into seasons. He is leading you, step by careful step, through the weight itself and into the fullness of his perfect plan, a tapestry woven with threads you couldn't see from the underside. Even in the silence where answers seem absent, even in the stillness where progress feels stalled, even in the uncertainty where the future is a mist, you can rest. You can find peace. You can breathe deeply because he is faithful. And his timing, stretching you, shaping you, surprising you, is always, always worth the wait. You didn't see the whole picture, didn't know the final brushstrokes, but you trusted the artist. And that, in the end, was everything.